was just scrap metal, until humans turned it into a fearsome war machine. Jin floated silently in her worn spacesuit, magnetic boots clinging to the hull of her small salvage ship, the Horizon. The vast debris field stretched before her like a metal galaxy. Twisted hull fragments, broken engine components, and shattered weapon systems drifted in the darkness, remnants of the Great War between the Confederation and the extinct Razak species. "Captain, are you sure about this?" Tay's voice crackled through her helmet comm. "We've been searching for 3 days. The good stuff is gone." Jin smiled to herself. 15 years as a military engineer had taught her to see value where others saw only trash. "Just a little longer," she replied, her eyes scanning the floating wreckage. Most salvagers had already picked through this area, taking valuable tech components, rare minerals, and intact systems. But Jin was looking for something different, something nobody else wanted. Her scanner beeped softly. There, a massive section of hull plating, twisted and blackened from weapons fire. Jin pushed off, thrusters guiding her toward the enormous piece of scrap. "What are you seeing that I'm not?" Tay asked, frustration evident in his voice. Jin reached the hull section and ran her gloved hand across its surface. The metal felt unusual, almost warm despite the freezing void of space. She pulled out a small device and pressed it against the metal. The readings made her heart race. "It's the alloy," she said, excitement building. "This isn't standard Confederation or Razak metal. This is something different." Back on the Horizon, Jin's small crew gathered around as she explained her findings. Lee, their tech specialist, looked skeptical. "So it's unusual. That doesn't make it valuable." "It absorbs energy," Jin replied. "Look at these readings. When subjected to heat or kinetic force, the molecular structure doesn't break. It adapts." "Who would buy odd metal when everyone wants functional tech?" asked Min, the youngest crew member. Jin's eyes gleamed. "No one. That's why we can get it for almost nothing." The next day, Jin approached the leader of the salvage operation, a gruff man named Park who controlled access to the debris field. "You want to buy the hull fragments?" Park asked, confusion evident on his weathered face. "The worthless parts?" "One person's trash is another's treasure," Jin replied with a shrug. Park laughed. "Take all you want. I'll give you a special price." His special price was still highway robbery for what others considered garbage, but Jin accepted without haggling. As her crew began the difficult work of cutting and hauling the massive metal sections, other salvagers stopped to watch. "What does she see in that junk?" one whispered to another. "Maybe she's building some kind of art installation," another suggested. "Or maybe she's just crazy," a third laughed. Jin ignored them, focusing on directing her team. They worked methodically, cutting the massive pieces into manageable sections, then using tractor beams to load them onto the Horizon. By the third day, their ship was dangerously close to maximum capacity. Tai approached Jin with concern. "Captain, we're almost at weight limit. The engines will struggle if we take more." Jin nodded, surveying their haul. "This should be enough to start." As they prepared to leave, Park approached. "Found what you were looking for in all that garbage?" "I did," Jin replied simply. "Care to share what makes it so special?" he asked, curiosity evident. Jin just smiled. "Maybe someday." She turned toward her ship. "Set course for the asteroid belt near Proxima Centauri," she told Tay once they were aboard. "The abandoned mining facility?" he asked. "There's nothing there." "Exactly," Jin said. "Nobody to ask questions. Nobody to interfere." As the Horizon pulled away from the debris field, its engine straining under the unusual cargo, Jin gazed out at the stars. Her former colleagues at the Confederation Defense Force had called her theories impossible, her plans impractical. That's why she'd left, determined to prove them wrong. Now, as her small ship carried what others had dismissed as worthless scrap, Jin felt the first real hope she'd had in years. The galaxy was changing, new threats were emerging, and humanity needed something different to survive what was coming. "It was just scrap metal," she whispered to herself. "But not for long." 3 years had passed since Jin's controversial purchase of the alien scrap metal. The remote asteroid mining facility she'd acquired had transformed from an abandoned shell into a bustling workshop. Hidden deep in the Proxima Centauri system, the facility hummed with activity as her small team worked day and night. Jin stood at the observation window, watching as Tai and Min carefully positioned another section of the unusual metal under the molecular scanner. The once twisted hull fragments now lay in organized sections, each labeled and cataloged according to their unique properties. "It's remarkable," said Hana, their material scientist. She adjusted her glasses as she studied the holographic display. The metal doesn't just absorb energy, it stores it. And with the right frequency, we can program its molecular structure to release that energy in specific patterns. Jin nodded. That's what the Confederation scientists missed. They were looking for traditional applications, weapons, shields, but this material works differently. For 3 years they had experimented, failed, and tried again. Jin had invested everything she owned into this project. Some nights, alone in her quarters, doubts crept in. Was she wasting her life on a fantasy? But each small success pushed those doubts away. "Captain," Lee called from his console, "you should see this." Jin walked over as Lee brought up a news transmission. The hologram showed a Confederation official speaking urgently. "Repeat. All civilians are advised to evacuate the Hestia colony immediately. Confederation forces will provide escort where possible, but resources are limited. The Vorax Empire has rejected diplomatic solutions and their fleet is expected to reach Hestia within 2 weeks. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what the Vorax Empire was, an aggressive, expanding civilization that viewed humans as little more than a resource to be harvested. "Hestia has over 5 million people," Dai said quietly. "They can't evacuate everyone in 2 weeks." Jin stared at the image of the peaceful agricultural colony. Her sister had moved there with her family last year. The Confederation's aging fleet was no match for the Vorax warships. "It's time," Jin said, her voice firm. The team exchanged glances. They had all wondered when or if the project would ever be completed. "But we haven't finished the field tests," Tay protested. "We're out of time," Jin replied. She walked to the far wall and pressed her palm against the scanner. The heavy doors slid open with a hiss. The cavernous hangar beyond housed their creation, a vessel unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Its hull was a patchwork of the alien metal, shaped and programmed through countless hours of trial and error. From the outside, it looked almost crude, asymmetrical plates joined together without apparent design logic. "It looks like a junk heap," Day laughed nervously. "That's exactly what we want them to think," Jin said with a smile. "Appearances can be deceiving." She led the team inside the vessel. Where typical spaceships had traditional controls, this one featured a neural interface hub, designed to bond with the pilot's thoughts, directing the programmable metal with precision impossible through manual controls. "The Confederation won't help us," Jin said, running her hand along the interior wall. "They've already written off Hestia. They'll focus on protecting their core worlds." "So we're going alone?" Min asked, his voice small. "Against the Vorax fleet?" Jin nodded. "We have something they don't understand, something they can't predict." That night, as the team made final preparations, Jin recorded a message for the Confederation Defense Force Admiral, who had dismissed her theories years ago. "Admiral Park," she said to the camera, "you once told me my ideas were impossible, that adaptive, programmable metals were a fantasy. I'm sending this message as we prepare to defend Hestia, not because I need your approval, but because soon you'll need my help." She paused, then added, "Sometimes the future isn't built with the finest materials. Sometimes it's built from what others throw away." As the ship powered up for the first time, its hull glowing with stored energy, Jin felt a strange mixture of fear and anticipation. What they had created might change everything, or it might fail spectacularly. Either way, they had no choice but to try. "Set course for Hestia," she ordered. "Let's show the galaxy what humans can do with a pile of scrap metal." The Vorax fleet emerged from hyperspace like a storm of metal and light. 7 massive warships, their hulls bristling with weapons, positioned themselves in orbit around the peaceful colony world of Hestia. Smaller attack vessels swarmed between them, preparing for the invasion to come. On the surface, panic spread quickly. Evacuation ships struggled to launch, filled beyond capacity with terrified colonists. The Confederation had sent only 2 escort vessels, barely enough to protect a fraction of the 5 million inhabitants. Governor Kim stood in the colony's command center, watching as the defensive screens mapped the Vorax fleet's positions. "They're deploying ground troops," reported her security chief. "First wave will make landfall in less than an hour." "And our defenses?" Kim asked, though she already knew the answer. "Farm equipment modified with mining lasers. A few thousand volunteers with hunting rifles. We can't stop them." The communications officer suddenly straightened. "Governor, something's emerging from behind Hestia's moon." All eyes turned to the display. A single vessel, unlike any they had seen before, moved toward the Vorax fleet. It appeared to be cobbled together from mismatched parts, its hull a patchwork of different metals and irregular shapes. "What is that?" Governor Kim asked. "Did the Confederation send help?" "No," her communications officer replied. "They're transmitting an identification code, civilian vessel, registered to someone named Jin." Aboard the Vorax command ship, Admiral Vex observed the approaching vessel with amusement. "They send a single ship against our fleet?" He laughed, his scaled skin rippling. "And not even a warship, a piece of junk." "It's not matching any known configuration, Admiral," his tactical officer cautioned. "Of course not. It's garbage," Vex replied. "Fire a warning shot. Show them what happens to those who oppose the Vorax Empire." Energy cannons charged, then fired. A brilliant beam of concentrated plasma streaked toward Jin's vessel. The bridge crew of the Vorax flagship leaned forward, expecting to see the strange ship vaporized instantly. Instead, the beam struck the patchwork hull and disappeared. The vessel continued its approach, unharmed. Inside her ship, which her crew had affectionately named the Junk Heap, Jin sat in the neural interface chair, her mind connected directly to the vessel's systems. She felt the energy weapon's impact, as a warm tingle spreading through the hull. "Energy absorption at 87% efficiency," reported Tay from his station. "Better than our tests." Jin smiled. "Let's show them what we can do with that energy." With a thought, she redirected the absorbed power. The patchwork hull glowed, then released the energy in a controlled burst, not as a weapon, but as propulsion. The junk heap accelerated suddenly, moving with impossible speed and agility for a vessel its size. "Impossible!" shouted Admiral Vex as the strange ship danced between his fleet's targeting systems. "All weapons, fire at will!" The Vorax ships unleashed everything they had. Energy beams, missile salvos, and gravity bombs filled the space around the junk heap. But Jin's creation absorbed each energy attack, using it to power increasingly complex maneuvers. The physical projectiles seemed to glance off the hull, deflected by localized energy fields created from the stored power. "They're adapting," Jin observed as she felt the alien metal respond to her thoughts. "The hull is learning from each attack." Using the absorbed energy, the junk heap suddenly accelerated toward the nearest Vorax ship. Before the enemy could react, Jin's vessel shot past, releasing a controlled energy pulse that disabled the warship's main weapons array. The Vorax responded with fury, but each attack only made the junk heap stronger and faster. Jin's neural connection allowed her to direct the ship with thought-speed reactions, impossible for conventional pilots to match. After 30 minutes of combat, 3 Vorax vessels had been disabled. The others maintained distance, clearly reassessing their strategy. "Admiral," Jin broadcast on an open channel, "your weapons cannot harm us. Withdraw from Hestia." The response came swiftly. "This is not over, human. We will return with a force that can destroy your contraption." The Vorax fleet regrouped, then jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind their disabled ships. Governor Kim's voice came through the communication system. "Whoever you are, thank you. But they will return, and in greater numbers. Jin looked at her exhausted crew. The junk heap had performed beyond their expectations, but one ship couldn't stand against an empire. "Governor," she replied, "we bought you time. Now I need your help. Gather every engineer, mechanic, and builder in the colony. We have work to do." "What kind of work?" the governor asked. Jin smiled. "We're going to teach your people how to turn scrap metal into a fleet." Jin stood in Hestia's main square, surrounded by hundreds of colonists. Behind her, the junk heap rested, its unusual hull still warm from the battle. She had just 2 weeks to prepare the colony for the Vorax's return. "I need every piece of metal you can spare," Jin announced. "Farm equipment, building materials, vehicles, anything. And I need people with skills. Engineers, mechanics, programmers, even children who can sort materials." Governor Kim stepped forward. "Why should we dismantle our colony to build ships we don't know how to fly?" Jin nodded at the concern. "You won't need to. The metal we'll use has special properties. It can be programmed to respond to basic controls. Anyone who can drive a harvester can pilot these vessels." Skepticism hung in the air until Farmer Dew stepped forward. "My harvester is 10 years old, but it's still working. Will that help?" Jin smiled. "Perfect." Within hours, the colony transformed. The main agricultural processing facility became their shipyard. Jin's crew set up stations to test and process metal. Not all materials could be used. They needed specific alloys that could absorb and redirect energy like the alien scrap. Tay supervised the material testing while Min taught colonists how to program the metal's molecular structure. Hana worked with the colony's scientists to enhance the process. Lee coordinated communications, creating a network to share successful techniques across work teams. Day and night, the sound of metal being cut, shaped, and bonded filled the colony. Children ran messages between teams. Elders sorted materials. Everyone contributed what they could. Jin moved between groups, checking progress and solving problems. On the 4th day, Governor Kim found her examining a farmer's attempt to convert his harvester into a small fighter craft. "Will this really work?" Kim asked quietly. "It has to," Jin replied. "We won't survive evacuation. The Vorax will hunt down every ship. Our only chance is to fight." On the 7th day, they completed their first colonial vessel. It was smaller than the junk heap, built from a grain transporter's hull reinforced with programmed metal. Farmer Doe volunteered to test. "Tay, just think about moving forward," Jin instructed as Doe sat at the simple controls. "The ship will respond to your intent." To everyone's amazement, the makeshift vessel rose smoothly into the air. Doe's laughter echoed through the communication system as he guided the ship in a gentle arc above the colony. "It's like it knows what I want," he exclaimed. By the 10th day, they had completed 15 vessels of various sizes. Some were little more than flying guns, while others could carry passengers and absorb significant energy. None matched the junk heap's capabilities, but together, they formed a fleet. On the morning of the 14th day, the sensors detected the Vorax returning. Not 7 ships this time, but 20. Jin gathered the volunteer pilots. "Remember, don't try to fight conventionally. Let them hit you first. Absorb their energy, then use it against them. Be unpredictable. Humans are good at that." Governor Kim approached as the pilots dispersed. "Even with, these ships were outnumbered." "Numbers aren't everything," Jin replied. "The Vorax fight with rigid tactics and predictable patterns. We'll fight like humans, adaptable, creative, surprising." As the Vorax fleet entered orbit, Jin boarded the junk heap. Her crew took their positions, faces tense but determined. "All ships launch when ready," Jin commanded. Across the colony, the makeshift fleet rose into the sky. Farm vehicles converted to fighters. Mining equipment transformed into bombers. Even children's school transports had been reinforced and repurposed. From orbit, Admiral Vex watched in disbelief as not one but dozens of unusual vessels approached his fleet. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "They've built more of those abominations." "Each one appears slightly different," his tactical officer reported. "They're not uniform designs." Vex's eyes narrowed. "No matter. We came prepared this time. All ships engage with gravity weapons. The battle for Hestia had begun, and against all odds, humanity's scrap metal fleet moved to meet the invaders. 5 years had passed since the Battle of Hestia. What had begun as a desperate defense with improvised vessels had changed the course of human history. Jin sat at her desk in the newly established Human Defense Innovation Center, looking out over the shipyards where hundreds of vessels were under construction. Not traditional military ships with their sleek uniform designs, but unique creations, each reflecting the imagination of its builders. The Confederation had finally recognized what Jin had proven. The adaptive metal technology worked best when paired with human creativity and unpredictability. A soft chime announced a visitor. Admiral Park, the same man who had dismissed Jin's theories years ago, entered her office. The Vorax have formally requested peace talks, he said without preamble. Their ambassador arrives tomorrow. Jin nodded. After their defeat at Hestia, the Vorax had tried 2 more major offensives against human colonies. Each time, they faced fleets of what they now called junk ships, vessels that seemed primitive but fought with impossible efficiency. They still don't understand how we beat them, do they? Jin asked. No, Park admitted. Their military doctrine can't account for it. Every simulation they run shows our ships should be easily defeated. Jin smiled. The Vorax relied on advanced technology, precise formations, and predictable tactics. They couldn't grasp how ships made from repurposed farm equipment, reinforced with programmed metal, could outmaneuver their finest warships. Will you attend the negotiations? Park asked. No, Jin replied. I'm needed here. She gestured to the designs on her screen, blueprints for a new generation of adaptive vessels. After Park left, Jin walked to the small museum that had been established at the center. Inside, behind protective glass, lay the original piece of alien scrap metal she'd found in the debris field 8 years ago. Beside it stood a hologram of the junk heap, her first creation. Though the original ship had been badly damaged in the final battle for Hestia, its legacy lived on in the hundreds of vessels now protecting human space. A group of young cadets toured the museum, listening as their guide explained the history. Before Jin's discovery, humans tried to match the Vorax ship for ship, weapon for weapon, the guide said. We failed because we played by their rules. The adaptive metal technology allowed us to change the rules entirely. One cadet raised her hand. Is it true the metal came from the extinct Razak species? The ones even the Confederation couldn't defeat? Yes, the guide confirmed, but the Razak never fully understood what they had created. They used the metal conventionally, for stronger hulls and better weapons. It took human imagination to realize its true potential. Jin smiled as she listened. The story had grown with each retelling. In some versions, she was a brilliant scientist who had calculated every outcome. In others, a visionary leader who had saved humanity. The truth was simpler. She had just seen value where others saw junk. Later that evening, Jin met with Tae, now director of the training program for new adaptive ship pilots. The Vorax captured one of our ships last month, he told her. They've been trying to reverse engineer it. And, Jin asked, they can duplicate the metal's properties, but their pilots can't make the ships perform the same way. They're too structured in their thinking. Jin wasn't surprised. The adaptive vessels responded best to human unpredictability, to pilots who improvised, who tried impossible maneuvers, who thought laterally. As she prepared to leave for the day, Jin passed a window overlooking the shipyard. A new vessel was being tested, its hull glowing with stored energy as it performed maneuvers that defied conventional physics, from worthless scrap to humanity's greatest defense. The metal hadn't changed, only how humans chose to see it. That was the real legend of Hestia. Not that humans had built powerful weapons, but that they had recognized potential where everyone else saw nothing but waste. In the growing darkness, the test ship's hull pulsed with light, a beacon of human ingenuity shining against the vast emptiness of space.